What if I told you their silence is not distance, it's strategy? You felt it the moment it started. The delay, the gap, the shift you couldn't explain but couldn't ignore either. And now you're here, replaying everything, wondering what changed, or worse, what you did wrong. But here's what most people never realize. Silence like this doesn't happen by accident. It's not random. It's not confusion. It's control. And the moment you react, you've already lost control. Because while you're overthinking, they're observing. While you're questioning your value, they're measuring your reactions. And every second you spend trying to understand them pulls you deeper into something you didn't even agree to play. A quiet psychological game. Most people think being ignored means disinterest, but you're starting to feel it, aren't you? That subtle tension, like something else is happening beneath the surface. Because there is. This isn't about connection anymore. It's about power. And right now, the power is shifting away from you without a single word being said. You don't notice it at first. It feels small, almost harmless, until you realize you're the only one trying, and that's where it begins to tighten. Not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, almost invisibly, like something wrapping around your mind. Because now you're not just noticing the silence, you're reacting to it. You check your phone more. You reread old conversations. You start measuring time between replies like it means something. And without realizing it, your focus shifts completely from your life to their absence. You think you're fixing it, but you're feeding the exact behavior hurting you. Because every time you reach out again, every time you double text, every time you try to bring things back to normal, you're sending a signal, a quiet one, but powerful, that their silence affects you. And the moment they feel that, the balance tilts even further. Most people don't see this part. They think effort creates attraction. They believe if they just show more care, more attention, more consistency, it will pull the other person back. But you're starting to notice something different, aren't you? The more you give, the less you receive. And that confusion, that emotional instability, that constant questioning of what changed, that's not a side effect. That's the mechanism. Because uncertainty creates attachment, and inconsistency creates obsession. You're not just being ignored, you're being conditioned. Conditioned to wait, conditioned to hope, conditioned to chase moments that used to come naturally. And every time you respond emotionally, the pattern reinforces itself. Every message you send without a reply lowers your value without you noticing. Not because you're worth less, but because you're showing them you believe you are. That's the trap. It doesn't break you instantly. It pulls you in slowly until one day you realize you're no longer acting like yourself. You're reacting, adjusting, overanalyzing. And the worst part, they don't have to do anything anymore. Because now, you're doing it all for them. And that's exactly where it flips. Quietly, but completely. Because the moment you see it, you can't unsee it. This was never about you being not enough. It was never about something you said, or didn't say, or should have done differently. That's the illusion most people get trapped in, but you're starting to see past it. This is about control. The moment you need their response, you hand them control. Not emotionally, not symbolically, literally. Because attention is the currency here. And whoever controls when it's given, controls everything that follows. Most people don't understand this. They think connection is built on consistency. But in reality, it's shaped by contrast. Presence, then absence. Warmth, then distance, and that gap, that unpredictable space, that's where attachment forms. Because your mind hates uncertainty. It tries to solve. Close it, make sense of it. So you lean in harder, you think more, you feel more, while they do less. And somehow that imbalance pulls you closer. Scarcity creates desire. When something becomes less available, your brain assigns it more value. Not logically, but emotionally. And when that availability becomes unpredictable, it creates obsession. You don't just want their attention, you start needing it. That's the mechanism. Not love, not coincidence, a pattern. And here's the part most people never admit to themselves. The behavior you're trying to understand isn't the real problem. Your reaction to it is. Because every time you wait anxiously, every time you check your phone hoping something changed, every time your mood shifts based on their silence, you reinforce the dynamic. You confirm their position and weaken yours. And control is the only currency that matters here. So the question isn't why they're doing it anymore. The real question is, why are you still playing? Takes so long. And the moment you realize that, something deeper clicks. Because deciding who deserves your attention means one thing first. You stop giving it away automatically. Not dramatically, not loudly, just intentionally. You don't react the second you feel the urge. You don't jump to respond just to ease the tension. You let the moment pass, and you stay still inside it. And that stillness, it's unfamiliar. Most people panic there. They mistake silence for loss. They rush to fix what hasn't even broken. But you're doing something different now. You're holding your ground. Your silence isn't weakness. It's the first sign you're waking up, because this isn't about ignoring them back. That's just another reaction. Another way of staying trapped in the same loop. This is different. This is recalibration. You're breaking the automatic cycle where their behavior dictates yours. You're removing the reward their silence used to trigger. No more instant replies. No more emotional overcorrection. No more subtle proving. And without that, the pattern loses its fuel. Think about it. Before, their silence created movement in you. Now, it meets stillness. And that contrast, it disrupts everything. Because control only works when it's responded to. The moment you stop feeding it, it starts collapsing. Because the moment you stop chasing, they start noticing. Not always immediately, not always in obvious ways. But the shift happens. They sense the difference, the space, the lack of urgency that once defined you. And that creates something new, something they didn't expect, curiosity. Now they're the ones wondering. Now they're the ones feeling the gap you used to carry alone. But here's where most people slip again. They feel that shift and rush to act on it. You won't, because you understand something now that they don't. This isn't about timing, it's about control. And once you take that back, what happens next changes the entire game. And that question, it lingers for a reason. Because deep down you already feel it shifting. Not them, you. At first it's subtle, almost uncomfortable. You stop reaching out as quickly. You pause before reacting. You let the silence exist without rushing to fill it, and it feels wrong. Because most people are wired to chase clarity, but you're starting to sit in uncertainty without needing to solve it. That's the first break. When you stop needing them, they feel it instantly. Not because you told them, not because you announced anything, but because the pattern they were relying on disappears. You're no longer predictable. And unpredictability changes everything. Before, they knew exactly how you'd respond. Silence triggered effort. Distance triggered attention. You became easy to read and easy to control. But now, there's a gap, and that gap creates tension on their side. Most people never reach this point. They stay locked in reaction mode, hoping things go back to how they were. But you're doing something different. You're pulling your attention back, not as a tactic, but as a shift in priority. You start focusing on your time, your energy, your direction. You respond when you choose, not when you feel pulled. You engage without needing an outcome, and slowly, the dynamic starts bending. Because attention is no longer one-sided. When you stop needing them, you stop chasing them. And when you stop chasing, they start noticing. That's when the roles begin to reverse without a word. They feel the absence now, the space, the uncertainty you once carried alone. And here's the part that changes everything. This isn't about getting them back. It never was. It's about becoming someone who cannot be controlled through silence. Someone whose presence isn't dependent and whose absence is felt. Because once you reach that point, you don't wait to be noticed anymore. You decide who's worth your attention, and that's where it finally settles, not as emotion anymore, but as understanding. Because once you stop reacting, you start seeing what was always there. The silence that used to feel like rejection doesn't hit the same way anymore. The delay that used to pull you into overthinking loses its grip. And that change isn't because they shifted, it's because you did. You were never ignored, you were being tested. Not by them alone, but by the version of you that still needed external validation to feel steady. The version that mistook absence for meaning. The version that believed silence had authority over self-worth. But that version doesn't lead anymore. Now there's something else, a different presence inside you. One that doesn't rush, doesn't chase, doesn't collapse into uncertainty just because someone else chose distance. And that changes how everything feels. You start noticing something most people never do. Attention behaves differently when you don't depend on it. It arrives without effort. It lingers without pressure. It responds without you forcing it. Not because you demanded it, but because you no longer needed it. And that's the shift. Because the moment you stop performing for connection, you start becoming the source of it. And now, you don't respond, you decide. Decide where your energy goes. Decide what gets access to you. Decide what no longer deserves a reaction. And in that space, control doesn't need to be taken back. It naturally returns. Because you were never meant to chase attention. You were meant to hold presence so steady, it comes to you on its own.